Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host, where today we are talking UFC Vegas 118, headlined by Belal Muhammad and Gabriel Bonfim. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, this weekend is an Apex card. Next weekend is an absolute monster card, UFC Freedom 250. I already have plays for both events logged in for clients. I've got 2 right now, including a 4% play for this weekend. I've got a 5% plus another play logged in for next weekend. So already got plays, going to be really loading up those cards. Love these cards from a betting perspective. Last week, we only had 1 play. We'll have a lot of plays over these next couple of weeks, so check that out. Now, with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Belal Muhammad and Gabriel Bonfim. Now, you've got Belal sitting at minus 125 in the comeback here. We've got Gabriel sitting at plus 105. Now, you look at Belal Muhammad here, and we know what we're getting from him. He's the former champion, a wrestler, going to push that pace, look to get in your face, look to crash the pocket, chain wrestle, get you to the ground, and really work his high-level wrestling that he has had on display for most of his career. And he's been able to do that throughout his career. Now, the one thing we have seen over the last 2 fights and his last 2 losses is that the wrestling really wasn't there. We fought Jack Della Maddalena in a fight that we did bet Jack successfully at nice plus money, got the job done. And then even against Ian Gary, which was, Gary, good distance management, tough to take down, tough to get in front of, and was able to get his wrestling going. And really it looked like, for the most part, he wanted a box, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, at this point in his career, looking to just primarily box. But with his takedowns here for Belal, he was only 3 for 16 on takedown attempts. Not very good at all. And really was able to really get that game plan going. Now 37 years old. Is this kind of the tail end of his career? Is he really aging out of the sport? That's really why this number is sitting where it's at. We've got Gabriel Bonfim on the other side here, 28 years old, and in the biggest fight of his career, without a doubt. This is a huge spot for him to really push him really in that upward trajectory in this division. Now, he's 19-1 as a pro, 7-1 in the UFC, including Dana White's Contender Series. And, the one thing he has really faced is he has had the luxury of facing a lot of strikers. And that's something where, yes, he's faced some decent opponents. There's no doubt about that. But, he's had the grappling and the wrestling edge over most of these opponents. Now, he's been able to have his boxing, solid boxing, good calf kicks, can mix in those takedowns. But having that advantage in the wrestling really is something that he's been able to go to. And in this spot, the wrestling and those kinds of things are really going to be tilted more towards Belal. Yes, I think jiu-jitsu is probably going to be on the Bonfim side, but the biggest red flag here on the Bonfim side is going to be his poor cardio. And that's what is going to be tested here. That is one of the biggest questions coming into this main event is, where is his cardio? Can he go a full 5 rounds? Can he go a hard 5 rounds? Can he go a hard 4 rounds? Or even really, really hard 3 rounds? That's going to be the big question here, because we know that Bonfim early is very explosive. He's very athletic. He's going to come forward. He's going to throw. He's going to have that finishing upside. Out of his 19 victories, 17 do come by stoppage, only going to a decision 2 times in his career. And that's really the big question here is, if this fight gets pushed out, how is that going to play out? And also the fact that one of the bigger, fights that I was looking at, and one of the, was his loss, was Bonfim's only loss against Nicholas Dalby. And this is a fight where, it was the perfect recipe to weaponize cardio, and Bonfim just couldn't really handle it because, Dalby is great at pace and pressure, staying in your face, pushing out volume, not really giving you an opportunity to catch your breath and just really push that pace. And Dalby was able to go out there and completely melt Bonfim. Bonfim got out, got finished early in that fight, and was really a terrible look. And it really puts up a lot of, concern coming into this fight on the Bonfim side, because Belal could absolutely implement that same game plan, move forward, stay in his face, keep the pressure going. And Belal has proven 5-round cardio. We have seen it throughout his career. I don't think cardio has ever been a concern for him. And if he pushes this fight into deep water, I do think there's big time advantages here for him as this fight progresses with pace, with wrestling, stay in his face. Even if he doesn't take Bonfim down, just get him working. Even if it's up against the fence, keep him working, get him slower, get that explosiveness out of him. And as this fight progresses, there's no doubt that Belal is very good at grinding out rounds, wearing down opponents, staying in their face. And I think that's really where, outside of the first 2 rounds, Belal is going to have a lot of success. Now, obviously, early in this fight, first 2 rounds, Bonfim has an opportunity to get a finish. He's that good. He's that explosive. He's that much of a killer instinct early in the fight. But if this fight continues to go, there is a big advantage here for Belal in this spot. And even if it plays out on the feet, I do still think the volume, of course, if he doesn't get finished early in this fight, the volume of Belal staying in his face, working and mixing at takedowns is just going to overwhelm Bonfim. And I think he's going to really have big time problems here. Now you got to add in also the fact that, Bonfim, I think, is kind of, held to a finish here. I don't think he's a good minute winner. I don't think that he's going to be able to just outpoint Belal over 5 rounds. I think he needs that finish. And then you look at Belal, he's only been finished 1 time in his professional career, his long, successful, high-level opponents, career. Only finished 1 time, and that was back in 2016 against Vicente Luque. So you're talking 10 years since the last time he was even finished. I just think this is a spot here where Belal, if he fights to a smart game plan, he gets the work going, he positionally wins, and maybe finds a late finish or just wins by decision here. But I like the former champion here, Belal Muhammad, to get the job done at -125. And the next one here we're talking about is going to be Chairez Ziam. He is -325 in the comeback here. We've got Tom Nolan. He is +235. Now you got Chairez here, who really just continues to elevate. I mean, we've seen fight after fight. This guy is just getting better, really rounding out his skill set overall, a high-level technical striker, clean combinations, very accurate, good counter-striking ability, nice distance management. And we're seeing it fight after fight. He's just getting sharper and faster and just really more polished. And one of the improvements he has made is that he's added wrestling to his game. He's starting to mix that in a little bit. And that also is just, opponents that are looking to walk him down or get more in his space, he's able to mix in a takedown, find top control, and he's found success doing that as well. While Tom Nolan on the other side here, 4-fight win streak, but he is raw. He is just a raw green talent at this particular point in his career. I think he's good. He's decent everywhere, but he's great nowhere. He does have some power. He can move forward, throw those big shots, get in your opponent's face, look for finishes, but he's reckless. He's a guy that's going to be swinging chin up, doesn't have, defensive awareness. I think that's going to really come back to bite him at some particular point, but he's very hittable in the pocket. And I think this is going to be a spot here where it's a big step up in competition for a Nolan. And I from who he has faced, this is just a very big step up. And you look who Tom Nolan's faced on his 4-fight win streak. Some of these guys don't even have wins in the UFC. You've got Victor Martinez. Victor Martinez went 0-3 in the UFC, no longer with the organization. Alex Reyes, 0-3 in the UFC. Vyacheslav Borshev, 2-6-1 run in the UFC, cut from the organization. And then Charlie Campbell recently, who's 2-2 in the UFC, but a low-level guy and still was scrappy and still was kind of early on, maybe given a little bit of problems to Tom Nolan here, while Chairez has faced the much higher level competition on a 6-0 run, has looked really good. And I think this is just too much too soon for Tom Nolan in this particular spot here. I do think he has a skill set. I do think he's going to grow and get a little bit better here. He's 26 years old. I think in the next couple of years, I think he can get a little bit better here, but I don't think he can compete anywhere with Chairez at this point. I think that Nolan is too hittable. He's too sloppy. I think lesser fighters are landing on Tom Nolan. I think if they're landing on Tom Nolan, I think Chairez is going to land and at a much more damaging, higher clip. And I think that these guys are so far apart when you're talking about caliber that the finish will materialize. I think he either knocks him out or finds a submission here. So getting off the -325 number, give me Chairez Ziam inside the distance at +115. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Bruno Silva. He is -135 in the comeback here. We've got Edgar Chairez. He is +115. Now, you got Silva here, who is a well-rounded fighter with good wrestling and some power. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to get in your face. He wants to get into the pocket. He believes in his power, and he's willing to have those exchanges and look to land those big damaging shots in the brawl. Now, he does have a few concerns here, especially when you're talking about he is the favorite coming into this fight. And one of the bigger concerns is going to be the fact that he's a 36-year-old flyweight. And as we all know, that's these lower weight classes, you really, you've got to be top of the top, because once your skill set starts to fall off, you need to be fast. You need to have those fast twitch muscles. You need to be explosive, that athleticism. And if that starts to tilt down, in this division, you lose that. That's a big advantage for for your opponent, and I think that's going to be an opportunity here for Chairez. And you also got to add in another issue here on the Silva side, is the fact he has taken a ton of damage over his last two fights. Or his last few fights, and two of them being, against Cape, against Joshua Van. Now, obviously, these guys are elite level fighters, but they still absolutely battered him for 3 rounds and then knocked him out in the 3rd round. And that's just, I think, a bad look for him being at this point in his career, taking this type of damage. I think really is going to start to add up for him at this point. And plus Silva, you got to add in the fact that, this guy's small for the division. This isn't somebody that's big. You're going to have Chairez, who's going to be 3 inches taller, have a 6-inch reach advantage. And I think that Bruno's going to struggle cutting distance. He likes to get into his opponent's face, throw those big overhand hooks, those big power hooks. And I think that 6-inch reach for Chairez, utilizing the jab, fighting, intelligently behind that jab, is going to really cause a lot of problems for Bruno, throwing desperate big overhands. Also, Chairez has the faster combinations, faster hand speed, good volume. I think a lot of those things are going to be very difficult for Bruno to kind of overcome here. And plus, Bruno, I think, it's finish or bust in this fight here. I think, it's possible. Early in that 1st round, he is explosive. He can land something. But I do think he does need big moments or a finish in order to find success. I think the better minute winner is going to be Chairez in this spot here. I think Bruno will have the wrestling, but I do think that the jiu-jitsu side of things is going to be on the Chairez side. I think even if he's taken down, he's got good get-up game. He's got good scrambles. He can get back to his feet. He also has that opportunistic submission game. I think he can also get that going as well, threaten some of those things. Even if he doesn't get it, it helps him get back to his feet or find some type of positional control. And I just think Edgar at this point is entering his prime. Chairez, 36 years old, take a ton of damage. The smaller guy, I think this is a spot for Chairez here where he probably, I think, should be maybe a minus 125 favorite here. And he's got a plus 115 number against his name. So give me Edgar Chairez to get the job done at plus 115. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Chelsea Chandler. She is minus 125 in the comeback here. We have Priscilla Cachoeira. She is plus 105. Now, I get it. This is a low-level fight. Any way you look at this one, it is a low-level fight. Both these females struggle to get wins. Both of them, you got Priscilla, she's 13-8 as a professional. You got Chelsea 6-4 as a professional. And they're tough to trust. It's tough to click that button and take either one of these females because they have poor decision-making, bad fight IQ. But with that being said, I do think one female here has a large advantage, and I think it is on the Chelsea Chandler side here, and I do believe it's going to be her grappling. I think that she's going to be able to get that going because she might not have the greatest wrestling. She does have some jiu-jitsu in her back pocket here, and I think in the smaller apex cage is going to assist, I think, her in getting takedowns, bullying Priscilla to the ground, latching onto her, dragging her down. She's going to have that physicality and that strength advantage. I think she'll be able to find those opportunities to get this fight to the ground because we do know Priscilla, very, very weak off the mat. At any point if this fight gets to the mat, I do think that you're going to see Chelsea banking that round, maybe a finish, but definitely banking the round once she flattens out Priscilla. And I don't think she's got much get-up game or any ability off of her back. And striking-wise, I do think that the perception is that it's, probably Priscilla has a better striking. I don't really think so. I think this is even on the feet. So I think that she has a large advantage in the grappling as, it's even on the feet. And I think that's really where you could see someone like Chelsea moving forward, looking to throw the volume, looking to throw those shots, marching down. And I do think that also that terrible striking defense on the Priscilla side as well. She literally gets hit double the amount of times that she lands on her opponent. Now, you look at it statistically over a large sample size of 13 UFC fights, she averages 4 significant strikes landed per minute while absorbing nearly 8. That is just not sustainable to get victories in the UFC, even against someone like Chelsea Chandler. I do think that she's going to be able to find opportunities to work in takedowns if she needs to, mix that up, look for positional control. And then as well, on top of that, I think she's going to have the volume. She's going to land more shots and just outland her over 3 rounds if it gets to that. So give me Chelsea Chandler here at -125 to get the job done. So there you have it for my plays for UFC Vegas 118. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. Again, I already have got plays up for this weekend's card, next weekend's big card. So we're locked and loaded. We're going to have a big show next week. Very excited about it. So let's get the job done. I'll see you next week, and let's cash.